and is to come, the Almighty. Amen. This gospel text is very moving for me. Now, for the last few weeks, I think the last 5 weeks, we've been working our way through John chapter 6 in the gospel lessons on Sunday. This theme of Jesus being the bread of life. And all the nuances of that have been fleshed out literally in this passage of Jesus saying, I am the bread of life, like manna that was given in the wilderness. You all remember that story. I am the provision. I am the salvation. I am eternal life. What moves me so much in this passage is the end of it. The little bit at the end. It's very revealing. Now, something about the Gospel of John is that you can read it from begin to end, and Jesus seems as though he never has any doubt ever of who he is and what he's called to do. And that's really true. That's one of the features of the Gospel of John. Jesus' identity is very secure. Unlike the synoptics, where there's other kind of nuances about the way the story of his life is told. Except, look at these verses. Jesus has been going all out in chapter 6, explaining this principle, really, of identity. I am the bread of life. Loaves and fishes, walking on water. If you eat this bread, you'll never hunger. If you drink my blood, you'll never thirst. It's this bit at the end. Those listening say something very honest. This teaching is hard to accept. Well, it's very honest. It's like they're pondering. This is hard. This isn't just a nice ethic about how we should live. This is about God's being here. God showing up. And us participating in it. This is hard to accept. And some of them turn away. It says in the text, some of them, this was the end of the line. I'm leaving now. You've crossed the line. I can't go any farther with you, Jesus. It's very moving to me because here's Jesus being in the fullness of who he is called to be and what he's been enabled to be and called to be and sent to be and all of those things. And the response, at least of some, is, can't go there. Don't want it. Don't believe it. It's very sad. And I think Jesus is wounded, maybe just a little bit, by the fact that some turn away, and that's the end for them. They're not going to go any farther with him. I think so because he turns to the disciples and he says, do you also wish to go away? I mean, he must have really hurt. Like, y'all going to leave me too? And Peter, in a shining moment, really it's a shining moment for Peter. He doesn't have a lot of shining moments, but this one is a beautiful one. Well, Lord, where else are we going to go? It's not exactly a ringing endorsement. It's not exactly, yes, Lord, we'll be with you, we'll die for you, da-da-da. No, it's none of that. Oh, well, where else are we going to go? But there's something really right about that. The answer to the question, if you eat of this bread and drink of this cup, if I am the bread of life, the answer to that is, are you going to follow me or not? Some say not. And Peter's like, well, where else are we going to go? That's the right answer. Truly, the right answer. Or at least it's something to think about. Where else would you go? See, we live in a time in which these are the very questions, the same exact questions of faith that people ask. searching for the meaning of life. Now, some folks, they approach that question by saying, it's not important, it's irrelevant. I work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, or more, whatever. My life is too busy to worry about the questions of the meaning of life. So they put it aside. Or you have people who are violently opposed. This fascinates me. I don't really get this, but we hear those voices of people who are, religion is stupid, it's for weak people, it's the cause of all of our problems, it's the cause of all of our wars. You've heard this, right? They won't have anything to do with the question either. And then there's Peter, and I would like him to be the rest of us. Where else are we going to go? Who else is speaking to us of a God's love that is everlasting? Who else tells us of the hope of forgiveness? Who else tells us of the joy of being loved and accepted and promised life eternal? Who else is saying that? It's a really good question. It's worth wrestling with because so often, I think in our culture, we say, I am eternal life. I am the center of all being. I will make the decisions. I am the beginning and the end. What I want, what I will, my perspective. There is a certain individualism and self-centeredness that is inherent in this age. It's in our culture. It's what we have become because of enlightenment, right? The last 300 or so years of progress, intellectual progress, saying, I only need me, my self-reliance. I don't need someone else. I don't need someone else. I only need me. And if I do need someone else, that someone else is going to be just like me. How different it is to hear this passage where Jesus is saying that God who created the heavens and the earth is with you, offering the very life of God so that you and you and you and all of us may share in the divine life. Who else is offering that? That's the question of this passage. I think Peter got it right, even though he might have kind of stumbled into it. Yeah, Lord, well, what else, what else is there? I think at that moment, it does not say this in the text, okay? So I am fudging. But I think Jesus said, oh, Peter, come here. And he grabs him by the neck and gives him a knuckle sandwich right on the top of his head. I think there's a moment of great affection when Peter says this. Where else are we going to go, Lord? It's like, what a comfort to hear from Peter. Come here. Let me give you love. Like brothers. Like brothers. It's a very moving passage. Of all of that kind of theology that's all wrapped up in all the verses that come before in John chapter 6, they're all about God and incarnation and life and deliverance and salvation. Here's just this simple question. Do you want it or not? Do you want it or not? And some say no. Jesus doesn't say, okay, well, let me rephrase it so that you will. You notice that, right? He doesn't say, let me massage this a little bit, see if I can make the truth more palatable for you. He, in sadness, watches them walk away. It's painful. But the question is, for you and for me, if Jesus presents himself in this manner to us, which I believe that he does, I am the bread of life. Those who come to me will never be hungry. If that's what's being offered, all that remains is whether you're going to eat or not. This is a yes or a no. Without knowing all the implications and all the answers, my goodness, none of us could know that. It's just a simple desire to follow Christ, to receive the goodness that God has given and wants to give. Christian communities, and I try not to knock other communities, but there are Christian communities that if you've not really been beat up enough at church, it's like you haven't been to church. So it would follow like this. If you've not felt guilty yet today in the singing of the hymns or in the prayers, if you haven't felt like that you've not really been to church, but that's not what Jesus is saying in this passage. It is a full-on offering. Here I am, no strings attached. There are no strings attached. Well, the cross. The cross. There is life that is offered. So here's the question. Will you also turn away and leave